Hi everyone, my name is Amy and I play the violin in the Akron Symphony Orchestra. I'm here in my music room in my house and I'm really excited to talk to you today about a very special piece called Symphony No. 9 by Ludwig van Beethoven. You probably already know or have heard a very famous melody from Symphony No. 9 called Ode to Joy. And maybe you've even played it on your recorder or on another instrument. This piece is very special to me because it really is the piece that made me first love music, especially classical music. When I was a little girl, my dad had a recording of the Ninth Symphony by Beethoven, and he would play it all the time. A symphony is a piece of music for orchestra that's made up of smaller pieces called movements. And the very last movement of Symphony No. 9 is the one that has the Ode to Joy melody in it. It starts really soft and it builds and builds and gets louder and louder, and then a chorus comes in of singers and vocal soloists. It's very, very exciting. It was the first time that a composer had put a choir in a symphony. We used to play it really loud in the car when we went on road trips with our family. And one time, my sisters and I, we played it really, really loud, like turn up the volume all the way loud in our house when our parents weren't home. And we got in really big trouble because my mom came home while we were doing that. And she said she could hear the music all the way down the street. And she was worried we were disturbing the neighbors. Anyway, this piece helped me discover orchestral music and the violin, and that's one of the reasons that I love it so much. Another reason I think this is a special piece is that Ludwig van Beethoven was a pretty amazing guy. This is a picture that I have of a number of different famous composers, and I zoomed in on Beethoven. He's right there in the middle. Beethoven lived in Germany and Austria from 1770 to 1827. He lived during the same time that the United States was declaring its independence from England, and also during the French Revolution. There were a lot of important ideas about freedom and the rights that people should have, and some of those ideas were really important to Beethoven. They didn't have cameras back then, so we have to rely on artists' drawings of people from that time. And Beethoven is usually depicted like he is in this picture, with kind of a stern expression and some really crazy hair. And I think he must have been a very dramatic person. So a composer is the person who writes music so that other people can play it. Beethoven was a very talented musician even as a child. And when he started writing music, people just loved his music, and they still do. But when he was a young man, just in his 20s, he started to lose his hearing. And by the time he wrote the Ninth Symphony, he was completely deaf. He couldn't hear anything at all. But he could still hear the music inside his head and write it down on paper for other people to play and enjoy. I can't even imagine how hard that must have been. When Beethoven's Symphony No. 9 was first performed in Austria in 1824, Beethoven was the conductor. The conductor is the person who stands in front of the orchestra with a stick called a baton in his or her hand and leads the orchestra by waving their hand like this. So Beethoven was conducting, and remember, he was completely deaf, and so he couldn't hear anything. And he got a little bit separated from the orchestra, a little bit off. And when the orchestra finished the piece, Beethoven was still conducting because he thought the piece was still going. The concertmaster had to stand up and turn Beethoven around so that he could see that the audience was waving their arms and their handkerchiefs and their hats because they knew that Beethoven couldn't hear their clapping, and they wanted him to know how much they loved his piece and how wonderful it was. The Ode to Joy melody is the music that Beethoven wrote to a poem about how awesome joy is. It talks about how everyone in the world experiences joy in their lives, and it's what brings people together. It's a very powerful poem about the importance of joy in our lives. Can you imagine setting a poem like that to music when you've had this tragic thing happen to you? Beethoven must have found a way to experience joy, even though a very important part of his life, his hearing, was missing. It's a good reminder that even when life is difficult, we can still find joy. Sometimes we have to look for it, but it's still there. A melody is the part of a song or a piece of music that is the most important and prominent part. Do you ever listen to a song on the radio and then hum it later? That part that you're humming is the melody. It's the part that carries the tune. In symphony music, there are usually some other parts of music played at the same time as the melody. This makes the music sound full and beautiful, and it helps us feel the emotions in the music. Beethoven was really great at writing melodies and then layering them with other patterns to make a kind of music lasagna that sounds really great. My daughters Anna and Maria are going to help me show you some of the musical layers that Beethoven wrote in the Ninth Symphony. This is Maria. She's going to play the Ode to Joy melody on the violin. Remember, the melody is the most important part. Okay, this is Anna, and she is going to play one of Beethoven's layers on the piano. Here's Anna again, this time on the violin with one more of Beethoven's layers. And here's yet another layer. Now that you've had a chance to hear what some of these musical layers sound like, I'm going to play a video for you that my friend, pianist Brent Schloniger and I made together that uses some of those layers. It doesn't have all of the layers that the real Ninth Symphony would have with orchestra and choir and vocal soloists, but it can give you an idea of what this musical lasagna might sound like. I hope you enjoy it, and I really hope that you enjoy playing the Ode to Joy melody on your own instrument.